Welcome to the tutorial video for the Backstitch and Baste Patterns Grab and Go crossbody. Grab and Go is a simple crossbody designed for beginner bag makers with a slip front pocket and a simple zip pocket inside, and options to put your strap connectors at the top or on the side of the bag, and I'm going to talk you through that in the pattern. Grab and Go also works brilliantly with a clear vinyl pocket, and again I'm going to talk you through how to use clear vinyl for your front pocket if you want to in the pattern as we go through. If you are making the Grab and Go Revolve, which is the kind of horizontal version, then you can follow this tutorial. The method is exactly the same. Your pieces are obviously just a slightly different orientation, but the piece letters and the construction is exactly the same across that pattern as well. So before we start, I'm just going to talk you through the pieces that you need to make your Grab and Go. So as per the pattern, you need 2 of piece A, 1 in your exterior and 1 in your lining. That's your slip pocket. If you are putting a clear vinyl pocket, then you don't need any piece A's. You need to cut yourself 1 piece G instead out of clear vinyl. You then need 1 of a piece B in an exterior fabric. It can be a contrast fabric like I'm using here, or it can be the same exterior print that you've used for the rest of your bag. You need 2 of piece C's in your exterior fabric. You need 3 of piece D, 1 in exterior for the back of your bag and 2 in your lining fabric. Those are your lining pieces. Then you need 2 of piece E and 2 of piece F. They are your strap connectors and your zipper tabs. I do recommend, if you are using vinyl for your exterior, that you do use a canvas or woven fabric for these, simply because if you're using vinyl you can end up with quite a lot of layers, so you can make that judgment depending on the capabilities of your machine. And then you need your strap. If you are using a fabric strap, then you will cut that out of your exterior fabric, or you can use webbing as well, and the measurements for using that are contained in the pattern. In terms of your hardware, you need 1 tri-guide for your strap. That will make your strap adjustable. You need 1 zipper pull for your zipper, and then you need either 2 D-rings and 2 lobster clasps. These are those kind of swivel clasps, or 2 rectangle ring connectors, and again instructions for using both sorts of connectors are included in the pattern. You also need your zipper tape for the top of your bag, and if you are doing your clear vinyl pocket, then you need something to bind the top edge of your pocket, either a strip of vinyl, some fabric to make a strip of binding, or you can use bias binding as well if you want to, and again in the video I'm going to show you how to use all 3 of those. So let's get started. So to start us off, I'm going to show you how to make the clear vinyl front pocket. You can obviously skip this section of the video if you are doing the normal slip pocket. So you need your piece G, which is your clear vinyl, and then you need your binding for the top of your pocket. Now if you are using bias binding, then you can just cut that to the length that it says in the pattern. If you're using fabric, then you need to create the same sort of binding strip as you would have in your bias tape. In order to do that, you need to draw yourself a line down the centre of your fabric strip, and again the measurements for this are included in the pattern. And then you need to fold each of your long edges into that line and clip them in place. You can press these as well if you're using canvas or woven with your iron to get a nice finish if you want to. And then you're going to fold this whole piece in half again on that line that you drew, so that your folded edges meet, and again clip those in place. You then need to take your piece G, your clear vinyl pocket, and you're going to slide it into your binding pieces. And this is the same whether you're using bias binding that's ready-made or whether you're using your binding strip that you have created, so that your piece of vinyl sits on your fold line, sits on the line that you drew. With your two folded edges either side of it. And check that those are folded nicely. If you've pressed yours as it tells you to do in the pattern, then yours will sit slightly better. And then you're going to top stitch along this edge using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance to hold that in place. If you're using your ready-made binding, you would do exactly the same thing. So fold your binding strip in half, slide the top edge of your vinyl into it so it sits on the center fold, and again sew across this edge using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. If you're using vinyl, which is actually my preferred way to create these with clear vinyl, then you're going to draw yourself a line down the center of your vinyl strip, and again the measurements for this are included in the pattern. And then you need to fold your vinyl strip in half on that line that you drew. You don't need to draw the line actually, but I find it helps when I'm lining up my clear vinyl. Give that a good press so that you kind of make a bit of a memory fold. And then again, you're going to slide your piece of clear vinyl into that line that you drew and clip that in place. And sew along this edge using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. If you find this tricky because your vinyl moves around, you can use a piece of double-sided tape to help secure that. I'll just show you how to do that. So if you pop a piece of double-sided tape down one edge of that center line that you drew, pop your piece of clear vinyl in so the top edge is on that line, and stick it down on that tape. Then you can fold your top section over and you should find it doesn't wiggle about, and you can get a really nice finish on that top section. And then you will sew this edge using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. Whichever method that you are doing, you will find that when you're finished that you do have a little bit of excess either side, so you can just take your scissors and trim that down so that your binding strip is the same width as your clear vinyl piece, and then pop this to one side for later in the pattern. So we're now going to create the slip pocket for the front of your bag. And again, if you've already made your clear vinyl pocket, you can skip this section of the video. You need your 2 piece A's. You're going to pop your exterior piece down right sides up, making sure if you've got a directional print, the top is at the top. Take your lining piece and pop that down on top, so they are right sides together. And then you need to clip or pin your top edge. And then you're going to sew this edge using a 3/8 of an inch 1 centimetre seam allowance. You're then going to take your piece and fold your lining over your exterior. You can press or finger press this if you want to as well. And then clip your piece so it's wrong sides together. And then you're going to top stitch the edge that you just have sewn, that's your top edge, using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance, and then continue that line of stitching around all 4 edges to baste your 2 pieces together. We're then going to take your piece B and pop that down right sides up. Please ignore this at the bottom here. I didn't quite have enough, but that's going to be lost in my seam allowance, so I'm not too worried about that for this project. Pop your piece down right sides up, pop your slip pocket on top, matching the bottom edge and the sides. I then like to just double check that my pocket is sitting evenly at the top. Sometimes if your seam allowance is slightly out, you can end up with a wonky pocket, so I always like to double check that and adjust if necessary. And then I'm going to clip or pin both the side edges of my pocket and the bottom edge. And then sew both the side edges and the bottom using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance in order to baste those together. If you're using your clear vinyl pocket, you're going to take your piece B, pop it down right sides up, take your vinyl pocket and pop that down on top, exactly the same as you did with your normal fabric slip pocket, and you're going to clip or pin the sides and sew round the bottom and both the side edges using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. I'm going to pop my fabric slip pocket on this one. You're then going to take your 2 PCs, check that they are the correct way up if you're using a directional print, and you're going to pop these down right sides together with your slip pocket panel you've just created. Exactly the same if you've used clear vinyl, and exactly the same if you're doing the revolve horizontal version. And you're going to match one of those to each of the long edges on your slip pocket panel and clip or pin those in place. And then you're going to sew down both of these sides using a 3/8 of an inch 1 centimetre seam allowance. You're then going to fold both of these pieces back on themselves to the side. You can press at these if you are using a fabric exterior. Give them a good finger press if you are using vinyl. And then you're going to top stitch both of these seams using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance, sewing on each of the piece C sides of the seam. And that's your front panel complete. So you can pop that to one side for now while we make the strap connectors. To make your strap connectors, you need your 2-piece E's and you need to pop those right sides down. If you are popping the connectors at the top of your bag, then you will need to draw yourself a line that's vertical down the middle of your pieces. If you are using a directional print and you are popping your strap connectors on the side of your bag, if that's your preference, then you'll need to draw this line horizontally across your piece, to make sure that your print sits the right way when you've attached your strap connectors. You then need to fold both of the side edges, if you've drawn a vertical line, into that line. If you've drawn a horizontal line, you'll be folding your top and bottom edges, and clip those in place. And then you're going to top stitch both those folded edges using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. You're then going to take either your 2 D-rings or your 2 rectangle rings if you're using those connectors, slide them onto your pieces, clip them so that the 2 short raw ends are together. And then you're going to baste both of those raw ends using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. Your strap connectors are complete. We now need to attach these to your main panels. So there are 2 options for attaching your strap connectors to your bag. You can either have your strap connectors so they are on the top, or you can have them so they are on the side. If you're attaching them on the side, that works best if you are using these lobster clasp connectors, because that will sit nice and straight. If you're using a rectangle ring, they don't sit quite so well at the side. If you want to attach your strap connectors to the side of your bag, you need to take your main front panel. You need to measure down from the sides as per the measurements that are in the pattern. You can, of course, adjust your strap placement as per your preference if you want to. And clip or pin those in place, one on each side, so that your basted raw edges are on the side edges of your piece. And then you're going to baste stitch those in place using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. If you want to pop your strap connectors on the top of your bag, you need to take your back panel and you're going to measure in from the top of your bag as per the measurements on the pattern. And again, you can adjust your placement of these if you want to, and clip or pin those in place. And again, baste stitch those using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. Please take care before you sew. If you are using a directional print, make sure that your strap connectors are facing the correct way. If you're attaching them on the top, then the side you want facing the front of the bag needs to be right sides up, because your strap connector will sit like that. So that's the side you'll see from the front of your bag. If you are attaching them on the side, then you need to make sure the side that you want on the front of your bag is facing down, so they will be right sides down. Your main panels for your bag are now complete, and we're going to prepare the zipper. For your top zipper, you need your zipper tape, your zipper pull, and your 2-piece Fs, which are your zipper tabs. First thing that you need to do is pop your zipper pull on your zipper tape. And then I like to just baste over the open end just to hold that secure whilst I sew my zipper. You then need to take your 2 zipper tabs and turn them so they are wrong sides up. Just like you did with your strap connectors, you're going to draw a vertical line down the middle of those pieces. And then you need to fold each of the side edges into that line and clip or pin that in place. You can press these as well. Then you're going to fold both of those folded edges so that they meet and re-clip that together. You then need to take your zipper and you're going to slide one end into each of your zipper tabs. Making sure that the end of your zipper tape is in line with this fold. Your zipper tabs are slightly longer than your zipper tape, so this should help you to slide that in. And then you're going to top stitch both of these along this edge here using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance, sewing on the zipper tab side of the seam. You now need to trim off your zipper tabs so they are the same width as your zipper. And then you need to find the midpoint of both the long edges of your zipper tape. You can do this by matching your tabs and mark or notch that point, making sure that your markings or your notch are contained within your seam allowance. You then need to take your front panel and mark or notch the centre of the top edge and pop that down right sides up. Take your zipper, pop that down on top so it is right side down, matching the bottom edge of your zipper tape with the top edge of your front panel. Your zipper should close to the left. Match those centre notches and clip that in place. Your zipper assembly will be slightly shorter than the top edge of your front panel. That's to leave your seam allowance free for when you sew your bag together. And you're going to baste this top edge using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. You're then going to take one of your lining pieces, that's one of your piece D lining pieces, and pop that down on top of your bag assembly. You can again mark or notch the centre of the top. Pop that down on top of the piece you've just sewn, matching the centre notch on your piece D lining with the centre notch on the top of your bag assembly. Your pieces should be right sides together with your zipper sandwiched in between them. Clip or pin all along that top edge, and then you're going to sew this edge using your zipper foot, or if you don't have a zipper foot, with a 3/8 of an inch 1cm seam allowance. Take care to move the zipper pull out of the way as you sew if you need to do that. You're then going to take your lining piece and flip it over the seam that you've just sewn. And we are going to top stitch that seam. Now in the pattern there are two options for top stitching that seam. Some sewists like to top stitch through their exterior and their lining because it holds their lining out of the way and stops it getting caught in the zipper. Some sewists like to top stitch a bag like this just by sewing through the exterior because that can give you a slightly nicer corner on the top of your bag. So if you are going to top stitch through both your exterior and lining, you need to clip your lining and exterior pieces wrong sides together so your zipper is exposed at the top, and then you're going to top stitch this edge using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance, top stitching through both your lining and your exterior. If you want to top stitch through your exterior only, you need to pull your lining out of the way. Make sure that the seam allowance on the seam that you've just sewn is folded down onto the exterior side, and then you're going to top stitch through your exterior only, again using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. Regardless of how you have top stitched, I then like to just put a couple of clips clipping my lining and exterior together just to hold that lining piece out of the way while we attach the back of the bag. So you need to pop your bag front down so it's right sides up. Take your Baste back panel and mark or notch the centre of the top edge. Then you're going to place this piece right side together with the piece that you have just sewn, matching that centre notch with the exposed edge, the unsewn edge of your zipper tape. And you're going to clip or pin that in place. Take care to make sure your strap connectors are nicely down out of the way because you don't want to catch those in your stitch line. And just like we did when we attached the front panel, we're going to base stitch this edge using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. You're now going to take the piece that you've just sewn and pop it down so it is wrong side up, so that your lining piece is facing upwards. Take your second Baste lining and again mark or notch the centre of the top edge. Pop this piece right side down on top of the piece you've just sewn. Your lining pieces should be right sides together, and match your notch at the top with that edge that you've just basted, and clip or pin that in place. And then you're going to sew this edge using your zipper foot or with a 3/8 of an inch 1cm seam allowance. Take care to make sure your strap connectors are out of the way if you've got those at the top, and also that you move your zipper pull as you sew as you need. You now need to take the lining piece that you've just sewn and the back of your bag and pop those pieces so that they are wrong sides together. And again, you're going to top stitch the seam that you have just sewn. Just like with the front, if you want to top stitch through your back, your exterior and your lining, you need to make sure your lining and exterior pieces are wrong sides together. Clip those in place and top stitch this seam using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance. If you want to top stitch through your exterior only, then you need to make sure your lining piece is folded back towards the front of the bag, and then again you're going to top stitch this seam using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance through your exterior only. So your bag exterior is now complete, and we can move on to the final construction for your bag. So take your bag assembly and make sure that your zipper is open. It is really important that you open your zipper, else you won't be able to turn your bag out the right way. So make sure your zipper is open. Fold your exterior pieces and your lining pieces so that they are both right sides together. So your exterior back is right sides together with your exterior front, and your 2 lining pieces are right sides together. Match your center seams and clip those in place. Now I just like to sew along these points before I sew my whole bag together, just to hold those in place. That helps you get a neat corner. So if you want to do that, you can just sew along this edge here between these 2 clips, covering that center seam using a 3/8 of an inch 1 centimeter seam allowance on either side. Make sure you backstitch either end to hold that seam secure. You're then going to clip or pin the remainder of your pieces so they are right sides together. Double check that your zipper is open. On your lining piece, you need to mark yourself a turning hole on the bottom. And leave that section unsewn so that you can turn your bag out the right way. And then you're going to sew around the whole exterior of your piece, leaving this section unsewn for your turning. Take care to make sure that your zipper is open before you start sewing, and that your strap connectors are out of the way, and that you don't catch your zipper tabs in these side seams here. They should sit out of the seam allowance in that section. And you're going to use a 3/8 of an inch 1 centimeter seam allowance. Before you turn your bag out the right way, we're just going to trim off the corners, cutting as close to the stitch line as we can, but without cutting through it. That will just help you get a nice neat corner point on your bag. I like to cut, rather than cutting straight across, I like to cut this sort of shape. I don't know if you can see that on the video. It's kind of like a little bit of a curve, just because I find that helps my corner to sit better. I also like to trim a little bit of this bulk out of the sides where my zipper is and where my lining and exterior meet. Again, just cutting as close to the stitch line as you can without cutting through it. I just find that helps my corner to sit nice and neat at the top of my bag. So I've done all 4 corners, and I've done those side edges as well. Now you need to turn your bag out the right way, through your hole in your lining and then through your zipper. If you're using vinyl for your exterior, then you can obviously ease that through quite gently and carefully. This is canvas, so it turns quite nicely. Going to push out those bottom corners on my exterior. And then if you've got a pokey tool or similar, you can use that to just gently ease out those bottom corners to get a nice point on those. Then going to very, very carefully ease out my zipper tabs. And again, you can give that a little poke if you need to get that to sit nicely. your lining inside your bag to just double check everything is okay before you sew up the hole in your lining. I'm really pleased with those corners. They're sitting really nice and flat. My zipper tab is very neat. My strap connectors are sitting really squarely. So the last thing to do is to close your turning hole. So you're going to pull your lining back out of your bag. Clip that turning hole closed by folding your seam allowance back on itself so it follows the line of stitching that you made earlier, and clip or pin those edges together. And you're going to close that hole by sewing a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance, or as close to the edge as you can. And there we go. We're going to pop that lining piece back inside your bag, push it nicely into your corners, and your grab and go bag exterior is complete. We now need to make your strap. So I'm going to show you how to create a fabric strap. If you're using webbing for your strap, then you can skip this section of the video. So you need to take the piece of fabric that you've cut for your strap. You need to draw yourself a line down each of the short ends that is 1 inch in from the end. If you're using vinyl for your strap, you do not need to do this step. Then you're going to fold your short ends into that line and press those in place. You're then going to take your strap and draw yourself a line that runs down the centre of the entire length of your strap. And keeping those ends folded, you're going to fold and press each of your long edges into that centre line. If you're using vinyl, then you'll need to finger press and clip these in place. If you're using fabric, you can take that to your iron and you can press those so they sit nice and flat, which is what I'm going to do now. So I've pressed both of those long edges into that centre line across the whole length of my strap. You then need to fold both of your outer folded edges so that they meet, and clip or pin your strap down the entire length. When you're finished, your strap should measure 1 inch or 1 inch in width if you've used the measurements in the pattern. My strap here is slightly thinner in width. That's purely because I cut my piece slightly smaller to use the fabric that I had available. But if you followed the measurements in the pattern, your strap will be 1 inch wide when you are finished. Okay, you're then going to top stitch using a 1/8 of an inch 3mm seam allowance around the entire exterior of your strap. Sew down both your long edges and across both of your side edges. And there we go, your strap is complete, and all that's left to do is to attach your strap to your bag. So you need to take your slider and your strap or your piece of webbing. You need to pop one of the ends through your slider, over the middle bar, and then back on itself so your strap is wrong sides together. So I'm just going to show you that again. So through your slider, over the centre bar, and back on itself so that your strap is wrong sides together. And then you want to pull through about 1.5 inches, 4 centimetres ish onto the other side. Your strap's wrong side together, and you're going to clip that in place. And then you need to secure your strap. You can either sew it using a grid pattern that is shown in the pattern, or you can pop a rivet in there if that's your preference. I'm going to pop a rivet in my strap. So the fitting of your strap is slightly different depending on whether you are using D-rings or whether you are using rectangle ring connectors. If you are using D-rings and lobster clasps, then skip this step. If you're using rectangle rings, we're just going to pretend that these are rectangle rings on here for a moment. You need to take the other end of your strap, pop it through the rectangle ring on the left of your bag, from the back to the front. Take the end of your strap, put it back through your slider, over the centre bar and out the other side, and pull your slider tight. Your strap should be wrong sides together, and it should be sitting nice and flat. If it's not, then you can obviously adjust that, but make sure you double check that that is sitting wrong sides together and flat before you fix your strap in the other side. You're then going to take the other end of your strap, pop it through your rectangle ring on the other side of your bag, from the front to the back this time. Pull it through until you have about 4 centimetres or 1.5 inches through the other side. Clip that in place and sew or rivet that just like you did on the other side of your bag. If you are using lobster clasps for your strap, as I am with this one, then you need to do something slightly different. So you need to take your 2 lobster swivel clasps and your strap. Take the end of the strap without the slider on it and pop it through one of your swivel lobster clasp connectors. Make sure your strap is going through so it's wrong sides together. And then pass that end of your strap back through your slider, over the centre bar and out the other side. Check again, like you have previously, that your strap is sitting wrong sides together. You're then going to take the other end of your strap, again pass that through your second lobster clasp. Make sure that your strap is sitting wrong sides together and that your strap isn't twisted at all. Pull through about 4 centimetres, 1.5 inches. Clip or pin that in place, and again you're going to sew or rivet that as you have done previously. So again, I'm going to pop the rivet in mine. And then take your strap to your bag and attach your strap to your D-rings, either on the top or on the side of your bag, if that's where you've put your strap connectors. And there we go. Your grab and go crossbody bag is complete.